When I bought my house, I wasn't searching for anything extravagant. I just wanted peace, privacy, somewhere I could relax in my own backyard without feeling like the entire world was watching me. After years of apartment living, paper-thin walls, noisy neighbors, and absolutely no personal space, I had finally managed to save enough money to buy a small house with a decent-sized yard. It wasn't massive or luxurious, but it belonged to me. More importantly, there was no HOA attached to it. That part had been completely intentional. I'd heard too many nightmare stories about HOAs and their endless rules, power-hungry board members, and ridiculous fines over things like mailbox paint colors or grass being half an inch too tall. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with any of that. What I didn't realize back then was that my property sat directly behind a neighborhood that did have an HOA. And not just any HOA either. This one was controlled by the type of person who treated the entire neighborhood like her own private empire. That's where Karen came in. Now, like most Karen stories, her actual name wasn't Karen, but honestly, the title suited her so perfectly that calling her anything else wouldn't feel right. She was the HOA president for the subdivision behind my house. And the moment she realized my backyard bordered what she considered her territory, she decided I was some kind of problem she needed to solve. The first time I met her, she didn't bother pretending to be friendly. One afternoon while I was planting shrubs near the fence line, she suddenly appeared at the edge of my yard. "Excuse me," she called sharply. I looked up and saw her standing there with her arms crossed and oversized sunglasses on like she was about to conduct an interrogation. "Yes," I answered. "You're the new homeowner?" she asked. "Yeah." She slowly nodded while scanning my yard like she was inspecting it for violations. "You should understand," she said, "that this neighborhood has standards." I brushed the dirt off my hands and gave her a polite smile. "That's good to know," I replied, "but I'm not part of your neighborhood." Her mouth tightened immediately. "Your property is directly adjacent to ours," she said. "Anything unattractive impacts our property values." There it was, the classic HOA line. I smiled again. Good thing there's nothing unattractive here. She didn't smile back, and that was how it started. At first, it was little things. Comments about my lawn not looking perfectly even. Suggestions that I replace my wooden fence with something more upscale and modern. Complaints about the hammock I had hanging between two trees. A hammock, apparently, that looked cheap. I ignored her completely. Honestly, that should have been the end of it. But Karen clearly hated being ignored. Over following months, things slowly escalated. First subtly, then much more aggressively. She started stopping by more often, leaving notes at my door, constantly trying to tell me what I should and shouldn't do with my own property. Every single time, I reminded her the same thing. I'm not part of your HOA. And every single time, she acted like that was simply an obstacle she could eventually wear down. Then the construction started. One morning, I woke up to the sound of hammering and drilling, the kind of noise that instantly tells you something major is being built nearby. I stepped outside into my backyard and immediately saw what was happening. Her house, technically behind mine on the other side of the fence, was getting an addition built onto it. At first, I didn't pay much attention. People renovate their homes all the time. But then I noticed something that immediately made my stomach tighten. What they were building wasn't just a normal addition. It was elevated, a second-story extension, and sticking out from the framing was something that looked very much like a balcony aimed directly into my backyard. I walked closer to the fence, trying to get a better view. The construction crew stayed focused on their work, measuring boards, cutting lumber, assembling the frame. "Hey!" I called out to one of the workers. "What exactly is that supposed to be?" The guy glanced over casually. "Balcony," he answered. "Off the master bedroom?" "Yep." "Facing this direction?" He shrugged. "That's the plan." I could feel a slow burn of anger building in my chest. There was no way this could possibly be okay. Not just ethically, but legally too. Property lines existed for a reason. Setback requirements, zoning regulations, building permits. You can't just throw up a second-story balcony that looks straight down into someone else's private yard, especially one that practically hangs over the fence line. Still, I didn't jump straight into confrontation. Instead, I decided to do something Karen probably wasn't expecting. I checked everything first. I pulled out my property survey and reviewed the boundaries carefully. The fence marked the exact edge of my property. No shared easements. No overlapping space. Then I went onto the city website and started reading through the building permit requirements. And that's when things started getting interesting. Any elevated structure, especially something like a second-story balcony, had strict setback requirements attached to it. It couldn't extend past a certain distance near the property line, and it absolutely wasn't allowed to cross over it. So I checked the city permit records. And guess what I found? There was a permit filed for a rear home addition, but there was absolutely no mention of a balcony anywhere in the documents. None. That was the first real sign that something wasn't right. Still, I wanted to make sure before making a move, so I waited and watched. Over the next week, construction continued nonstop. The balcony slowly took shape. Flooring went in, railings were installed, and the entire thing was positioned perfectly to overlook my backyard. And when I say overlook it, I mean completely. Anyone standing up there would have a direct view of everything. My patio, my seating area, even sections inside my house through the back windows. Any sense of privacy I had would be gone. That was the moment I decided to confront her. I walked around the front of her house and knocked on the door. A few seconds later, she opened it wearing that same tight, practiced smile I remember from our first meeting. "Oh," she said coldly. "You?" "Yeah," I replied. "We need to talk about the balcony." Her expression barely changed, but I caught a quick flicker in her eyes. "What about it?" she asked. "It overlooks my entire backyard," I said. "And from what I can tell, it may not even be properly permitted." She gave a small laugh like the idea itself amused her. "Everything we do is fully within HOA guidelines," she said confidently. "I'm not talking about HOA guidelines," I answered. "I'm talking about city regulations." Her smile became thinner. "Well, I'm sure everything's already been handled correctly." "Then you won't mind if I verify that," I said. That's when her tone shifted completely. "You're overreacting," she snapped. "It's just a balcony. It's an invasion of privacy." I shot back. "And if it violates setback rules, then it's illegal." She folded her arms tightly. "You don't get to tell me what I can do on my property." I stared right back at her. "And you don't get to build something that affects mine." For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then she smiled again, except this time the smile wasn't polite. It was smug. "Go ahead," she said. "Call the city." So I did. The very next morning, I filed a formal complaint with the city's building department. I attached photos, measurements, screenshots of the permit records, and highlighted the fact that the permit never mentioned a balcony at all. Then I waited. It didn't take very long. 3 days later, a city inspector arrived. I happened to be outside in my backyard. When he pulled up, he introduced himself, explained that he was there to investigate a possible code violation, and asked if he could inspect the structure from my side of the property. I gladly let him. For about 15 minutes, he carefully examined everything. He checked measurements, studied the angles of the structure, and referenced documents on a tablet while comparing them against the construction. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Yeah," he muttered, "this isn't right." I felt a small wave of satisfaction hit immediately. "So what happens now?" I asked. "I'll need to speak with the homeowner," he explained. "But if this wasn't included in the permit and it violates setback requirements, then this is a serious issue. A very serious one." He walked over to Karen's house afterward. I couldn't hear every word they said, but I heard enough to understand exactly how the conversation was going. At first, her voice sounded confident and dismissive like always. Then it changed, sharp, defensive, frustrated, and eventually quiet. About 30 minutes later, the inspector left. Construction stopped the very same day. No workers, no hammering, no drilling, just silence. About a week later, I noticed a bright orange notice posted along the side of her house. Stop work order. I'm not going to lie. Seeing that felt incredibly satisfying. But things still weren't over. Over the next several weeks, the city launched a full review of the construction project. And that's when the bigger problems started surfacing. Turns out the balcony wasn't just unpermitted. It directly violated multiple zoning regulations. The structure extended too close to the property line. It overlooked a neighboring property in a way that required special approval, and none of that approval had ever been granted. Karen tried fighting the decision, of course. She filed appeals, argued that the balcony was only a minor architectural feature, and claimed it was important for maintaining the neighborhood's visual consistency. The city didn't care. Eventually, the final ruling came down. The balcony had to be removed completely, not adjusted, not redesigned. Removed. The day demolition began was almost as satisfying as the day I bought the house itself. The construction crew returned, but instead of building upward this time, they started tearing everything apart. Boards came down. Railings were dismantled. Piece by piece, the entire structure disappeared until it looked like it had never existed at all. Karen never came outside once during the process. Honestly, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered the months of harassment, the non-stop attempts to control property that wasn't hers, and the complete disregard she'd shown for my privacy and personal space. That feeling disappeared pretty quickly after that. And just like that, it was over. My backyard was mine again. Quiet, private, peaceful, exactly the way it was supposed to be. Karen stopped bothering me after that, too. No more comments about my lawn. No more unwanted advice. No more surprise visits, standing at the fence line, acting like she owned the place. I guess even she eventually found her limit. As for me, I still spend most evenings out back relaxing in that same cheap-looking hammock she hated so much. Only now, one thing is missing from a view, a balcony that never should have been there in the first place. And honestly, I don't miss it at all.